7 years ago, a catastrophe struck the world. Everyone was caught unaware. A terrifying disaster called a dungeon break occurred where horrifying creatures passed through portals that appeared out of thin air. Because of this incident, many people died and suffered. Out of luck, as the bad days went by, his parents also passed away. That day, he cried tears of blood and pledged to become a hunter and rip apart the monsters in the world. 7 years later, in the Catastrophe Memorial Park, he was sitting on a bench, while behind was a mother talking to her child. He was disappointed after being kicked out of the hunter training center. His name was Han Sung-yoon. His eyes were lifeless as he remembered his time in the training center. The director informed him not to come to the training center anymore. Sung-yoon could not believe what he had heard and asked the reason behind his dismissal. The instruction then explains that those who have awakened got a few months to complete their training in the exclusive training hall. However, Sung-yoon had already exceeded that period. 7 years had already passed. Sung-yoon stared at the director as he continued to listen. The director let out his honest words, describing Sung-yoon's talent as trash and further staying would make the training center's reputation garbage. Sung-yoon was speechless and in disbelief. This time, the colleagues behind him started their trash talk, calling Sung-yoon stupid for not knowing his place. He was persistent, but unfortunately, one's status would not increase even after training for 7 years. Back to the present, Sung-yoon clenched the drink in hand until it burst out. Besides unlocking unique traits and acquiring skills, Sung-yoon's stats did not increase. Sung-yoon started asking himself why his father passed away. Behind him, a little girl raised her fist, shouting how she remembered how her father died. She proudly told the story about the time when the monsters came as his father saved the people until the end. The girl's mother agreed. She further questioned what they should do if they go through tough times later in life, to which the girl answered, she would be strong and won't give up. Hearing the child's positive words, Sung-yoon's face brightened up and his eyes gained another life. The mother was proud and brought her daughter into her arms and embraced her warmly. It was then they noticed a sudden movement from their side as they both turned to look. They saw Sung-yoon bowing toward them, so they asked who he was. After the brief bow, Sung-yoon dashed away, leaving the mother and her daughter in confusion. Sung-yoon now remembered how he endured for the past 7 years. His face was painted with determination. He knew he could not stop in his tracks. Sung-yoon would not give up. Later that day, the rain fell heavily. We see Sung-yoon knocking on the door. He was wet. A while later, the door opened and the light shone through from within. The director's face appeared, calmly asking Sung-yoon to go back. However, Sung-yoon continued to plead. He asked for help to take the hunter exam once more, and he could not give up like this. Faced with Sung-yoon's unyielding spirit, the director could only sigh in frustration. He gritted his teeth in anger. The bastard Sung-yoon could not freaking get it. Sung-yoon was stunned. His face looked like he had bumped against the wall. The director pointed at Sung-yoon and continued to shout as he asked if the bastard came for a refund for the membership fees, to which Sung-yoon denied. Sung-yoon retorted it was not because of the money. However, the director did not believe him and directly punched Sung-yoon in the face, sending him away. Sung-yoon fell heavily and crashed into the piles of garbage on the street. The director's irritated face continued asking Sung-yoon, what else did he mean by coming? While Sung-yoon sat there silently, he heard the director's words, you failure of a bastard. Sung-yoon lay unmoving on the ground as the downpour of rain drenched him. If he only had a unique trait. If only he had a little talent. Then, the Tower of Trials is praising you for your iron will. A notification appeared out of nowhere. Praise, who was that? Sung-yoon instinctively asked in shock. Immediately, the pool of water on the ground beneath him transformed. It deepened as if it had become a lake. Sung-yoon was shocked as he continued falling down. In the neighborhood, only his plea for help along with the gushes of rain had remained. This time, the director opened the door and was thoroughly angered. He wanted to scold Sung-yoon, but to his surprise, the bastard was nowhere to be seen. The director continued to look left and right, unconvinced as he wondered where Sung-yoon disappeared to. Unfortunately, the The sound of rain falling on the garbage bins was all he could hear. Meanwhile, Sun Yun continued to plunge deep into the water. He screamed at the top of his lungs. It was useless, and now, he was out of breath. Luckily, with a splash, he was out of the water and continued to fall down. Sun Yun stabilized himself, seeing the notification again. The Tower of Trial had selected all suitable candidates from Earth. He wondered if a second catastrophe occurred. Please select difficulty. The rewards you will get will be proportional to the chosen difficulty. A notification appeared again. Sun Yun had no idea what was happening. However, the choices of difficulty were already presented to him. In the end, Sun Yun followed his instincts and seized the chance as he continued to press on. Sun Yun felt his body getting pulled forcefully. He was warping out of space. A notification rang again. Sun Yun would enter the first floor of the Tower of Trial, and it hoped he would obtain satisfactory results at the end of the sufferings. In just a blink of an eye, Sun Yun appeared in a new place. He was in a desert where the rays of the sun produced scorching heat. A weapon will be provided, and a notification suddenly rang. After a moment, a long sword stuck in the ground appeared in front of Sun Yun. Following this, a notification rang again. The subject of the trial is survival, and the reward would be a unique trait. This time, Sun Yun's eyes widened in surprise, and the words unique trait finally caught his attention. Sun Yun then remembered the past. He worked so hard over the past 7 years. However, at this moment, he would have a unique trait as a reward. This is insane, Sun Yun screamed crazily. First, Sun Yun walked over to the sword. He needed it to fend for himself. Just as he was walking, the sand under his feet started to rumble, and he nearly lost his footing. Sun Yun immediately ran out of the way as the sand continued to grow as if a mountain was emerging from it. The tutorial would begin. A notification rang as Sun Yun looked at his back, and the dumbfounded look on his face turned into fear. Tower of Trial chosen difficulty, hard. The notification continued and proclaimed, a sand golem has appeared. This is crazy, Sun Yun exclaimed as he stared at the humongous being in front of him. Then, please survive against the sand golem for 10 minutes. As he received the information, Sun Yun started to run as a huge foot followed on his back. Damn it! Sun Yun nearly fell after he started to run when a notification appeared. Sun Yun was stupefied, breaking into cold sweat as he saw the consequences of failing the trial. The penalty would be death. Sun Yun screamed pitifully as he ran for his life. He wondered if he could escape just by running away. Although the sand golem looked slow, it was actually faster because of its size. Also, he was running on top of the desert. Sun Yun knew it was impossible for him to run for 9 minutes with his stamina. Then, Sun Yun remembered the sword he got. He thought he discovered what he was supposed to do. It was either he died trying to run away or he fought to the death. However, Sun Yun continued running as he screamed in despair. Damn it, how he was supposed to win, Sun Yun cursed despite being out of breath. This time, his memories brought back the insults he suffered in the past. Damn it, Sun Yun cursed again. He could not accept his fate. As he continued to run for his life, Sun Yun felt the sand golem's mockery towards him as though it turned into a titan and teasingly said, Sun Yun was nothing in this world. Sun Yun clenched his teeth. Would he die a pathetic death just by trying to run away? No, Sun Yun found the answer. He changed his path and ran away to the side. He had 7 years of trying to be a hunter. He was confident and knowledgeable compared to the hunters on the field. At the very least, there's no answer if he kept running away. He needed to find a new way to survive. Monsters like golems would stop moving if he could destroy their core. However, their cores are usually in places Sun Yun could hardly reach. In spite of this, Sun Yun continued to run. He was heading for the summit ahead. The sand golem was lured, and with this plan, Sun Yun could make the sand golem's core easier to reach. While in the air, Sun Yun thrust his blade on the sand to hold himself in place. After they fell, Sun Yun's momentum continued as he slid while his blade left a long gush. Sun Yun found his ground while the sand golem fell down on the foot of the mountain. The sand golem tried to upright itself. Unfortunately, Sun Yun would not give it a chance. He jumped into the air. He was able to reach it as he landed near the sand golem's core. Sung Yun hastily stood on his feet. There, he finally swung his sword towards the core. However, it was hard and the blade rebounded as sparks glistened after the strike. Sung Yun raised his blade, ready to slash again. On the sand golem's core, he could already see some cracks. The sand golem fought back as it raised its head. Sung Yun lost his balance. The core was harder than he thought. Damn it, Sung Yun could already perceive his victory. If he could just hit the core one more time, Sung Yun was prepared to strike when a huge silhouette of the sand golem's hand appeared on his side. Caught unprepared, Sung Yun was easily grabbed, he was squeezed and blood flew out from his mouth. He knew it, Sung Yun still failed at the very end. You are nothing, Sung Yun could imagine the mockery in the sand golem's eyes. He was again reminded of the insults he had received. However, Sung Yun continued to grip his sword tightly. Stop it! Sung Yun erupted in fury as his eyes glinted with ferocity. Shut up, you golem! Sung Yun shouted and threw his sword with all his might. It hit the mark and the golem's core started to crack. With that, the sand golem roared in defeat. A notification then appeared. Sung Yun had destroyed the core of the sand golem, completing the tutorial trial. The sand golem started to disintegrate as the debris of its core began to fall. The calmness of the desert resurfaced again. This time, Sung Yun emerged from the sand, wondering if he really did what he had done. Him killing a golem, Sung Yun was shaken as he thought about how and why he could. Sung Yun then smiled. Even though he could, he barely won against it. As blood drenched his body, Sung Yun stood and proclaimed he survived, hearing a notification for clearing the first floor of the Tower of Trials. As the clear reward, Sung Yun earned unlock unique traits and obtained 1,000 points. Additionally, he got the skill, Fast Recovery Plus, and 500 points. Reading the rewards, Sung Yun could not believe it. He was emotional as he put in a lot of effort for the past 7 years only to receive scorn and mockery. Soon, Sung Yun finally received his unique trait, Necromancy. Now, Sung Yun could become a hunter. However, all of this could only happen after he survived. This time, something caught Sung Yun's attention. An unknown object materialized in the air. A black fog appeared where the sand golem died. Sung Yun reached for the fog with his finger and a notification appeared, asking if he would like to absorb the sand golem's spirit. Sung Yun pondered what was the meaning of spirit, absorb, and if the black fog is his unique trait. In the end, Sung Yun gave his confirmation and the black fog suddenly approached him. Sung Yun's eyes widened as the fog surged all over his body. This time, a notification appeared. He had absorbed the spirit of the sand golem, and his proficiency had increased by 7%. Sung Yun looked at the last bit of fog. He was alarmed as he felt something enter his body. Finally, after all the fog was absorbed, a notification appeared. He now had 1 out of 5 spirits. Sung Yun could feel the spirit within his body. He closed his eyes and tried to find out how to use it. A notification then appeared. His strength increased by 3 while his health increased by 2, and he could permanently increase his stats by the spirits he had obtained. Sung Yun was amazed. He could feel it, the energy filling up his body, and his stats had gone up. In the past, no matter how he trained, he could not increase his stats, but now, he could permanently increase them. Sung Yun checked his stats, seeing his unique trait and their effects. He was glad. If he returned with the skill, he could become a hunter. Soon, a portal appeared in front of Sung Yun. He silently stared at it. In the end, Sung Yun took a step forward. He had no choice but to go. The portal was activated. Sung Yun was sent inside a room, but he immediately collapsed. Damn it, his injuries are worse than he had thought. Fortunately, soon after he struggled to lift his body, Sung Yun was surrounded by a magical energy. All of his injuries were gone, and now he could steadily stand his ground. As Sung Yun continued to walk forward, he wondered if his body healed when the trial was over, but soon after, a bed was brought over to his notice. Forget it, he was tired. Sung Yun immediately got into bed. What he was supposed to do now? Could he really escape the tower? Sung Yun was confused about why the tower called him. Soon after, a notification appeared. Sung Yun could use 5 commands, which were info, store, community, inventory, and trial. He got up from his bed as he further read, saying the command word will activate the commands. Sung Yun clapped his face. He needed to focus on surviving for now. He said the command word trial, and a notification appeared. 23 hours and 21 minutes remained for the second floor trial. Sung Yun could not select the trial yet. Next, he used the command word community, and a list of people's chats appeared. Sung Yun saw how confused everyone was in the chat, like the people who got dragged for the trials despite not being a hunter. Suddenly, an admin named XXX entered, disabling the chat. Sung Yun was surprised at the unexpected appearance. Admin XXX chatted. They had important information for those who passed the tutorial trial. On the bed, Sung Yun still grumbled about how he did not know how to return, but he still focused on memorizing the important information. Admin XXX messages appeared. They would teach how to use the points earned during the tutorial trial as currency, and the possibility of giving or receiving points from others in the community. Sung Yun continued to read. Within the Tower of Trials, one cannot even get a single water without points, which could only be earned through trials. In other words, he needed to do everything to get used to the rules within the tower, and kept entering and clearing trials to earn points and live. That is all to share. Admin XXX disappeared after leaving the message, unblocking everyone's prohibition to chat. This time, Sung Yun was disappointed. He thought he could be a hunter if he could just return. He suddenly looked at the sword in the corner. He could not do much with only a piece of long metal. Store. Sung Yun used the command word and purchased a good old shield. All the hunters lost their stats when they entered the tower, so he practiced his move. Sung Yun brought his sword forward as he shielded his body. He proceeded with foot movements. Sung Yun knew it would be easier to learn skills that everyone had learned before. Sung Yun continued to practice until sweat dripped from his face. Everyone started the same, and if he did not train, there was no way that he could catch up to them. In the end, Sung Yun let go of his sword and shield as he tiredly lay down on the floor. Soon after, magical energy engulfed Sung Yun, draining his sweat and fatigue away. His condition was perfect again. Thanks to the healing effect of the waiting room, he could train easily. Sung Yun sighed. He should be able to train for the next trial. Inventory. Sung Yun used the command word as he thought about what he should do about his hunger. A bunch of items appeared. Sung Yun was shocked as he realized he only had 40 points after buying some stuff. If he did not get the additional rewards, he would not have gotten his shield. Time went by, and only 17 minutes remained for the next trial. Even the chat was quiet now. At this moment, Sung Yun wondered if he could manage to survive again. With a determined face, Sung Yun confirmed to himself he would survive. The timer started its countdown. After which, a confirmation appeared. Sung Yun accepted the challenge, passing through a portal toward a forest. A notification appeared. He had entered the second floor of the Tower of Trials with hard difficulty. Sung Yun was surprised this time. The subject of his trial is assassination. The notification appeared. He had to assassinate the orc tribe leader within the time limit. The orc leader would be his target, Sung Yun confirmed as he approached the edge of the cliff. Down below he discovered a village. What Sung Yun saw was the orc tribe. Within the village, a swarm of orcs gathered. This time, Sung Yun was tasked to defeat their leader. The village was not big. However, strong orcs stood guard around it. Nearby, Sung Yun approached silently as he hid behind the bushes. Normally, if there was a guard amongst the orc tribe, there was also a hunter, and Sung Yun knew this. He believed it was already difficult to win against an orc hunter. However, the problem is there were a lot of them. In order to defeat them, a party of E-rank hunters was needed to make sure no one would die. Helpless, Sung Yun could only ponder on what he should do. As he crawled on the ground, Sung Yun thought of retreating. He would come back later with a plan. Sung Yun smiled. There was a way to complete the trial. In the forest, dried wood was lighted with fire. Sung Yun sat on the ground. There was a couple of firewood around him, while he stared at the display as he held the lighted wood in his hands. Now then, Sung Yun moved his hand. He stuffed the firewood directly into the display. After which, the firewood was placed on his inventory. Sun Jian's smile widened as his experiment succeeded. In the forest nearby, a flock of birds flew after sudden movements. A group of diligent orcs could be seen walking with their weapons. Sun Yun continued to observe as he hid behind a tree. The group of orc hunters was already gone and would be back at sunset. He had plenty of time. The way to complete his trial was with fire, Sun Yun thought, bursting with confidence. Meanwhile, a couple of guards could be seen at the entrance of the orc village. Sun Yun hid in a tree as he observed. The orc guards would not stand guard all the time and they would return to the village to eat or take a break. His chance had come. Sun Yun began to move as he threw a lighted fire. Sun Yun was fast. Another lighted firewood was thrown again. The forest easily caught fire and blazed within the blink of an eye. The orc villagers started to run around with their buckets as they fought the fire. Thick smoke rose into the sky. If Sun Yun closed off the village with fire, he would not worry about the orc hunters coming back from the hunt. One by one, the orcs cooperated and brought buckets of water. However, Sun Yun needed to kill them. The orc continued on with their work, taking water from the lake, unaware of Sun Yun's plan. The orc started to gather a bucket of water when Sun Yun appeared on its back. This time, the orc turned his head as he noticed something. However, he was immediately pierced by Sun Yun's sword and he could only growl before his death. A black fog appeared on the orc's dead body. Sun Yun's unique trait, Necromancer F, has been activated. Sun Yun was notified about the orc spirit which he happily absorbed. The spirit disappeared into his body. His proficiency had risen to 9%. However, Sun Yun's happiness was cut short when he noticed a huge orc on his side. Sun Yun was caught off guard when he encountered a guard. The orc guard swung its sword heavily as Sun Yun raised his shield to block the terrifying blow. Absorb, Sun Yun commanded and used the orc's spirit to permanently increase his stats. A magical energy surged around Sun Yun. His strength increased by 4 and his agility increased by 2. A cold glint flashed in his eyes, and Sun Yun counterattacked. Now, the forest was completely engulfed in flames. Without any difficulties, Sun Yun defeated the guard and absorbed its spirit, and his fast recovery skill has been revitalized. Sun Yun's stats increased again, and the guard's spirit also helped in improving his stamina. The sky looked gloomy. Sun Yun's silhouette could be seen walking out of the blazing forest. A group of orcs easily noticed his presence. They were already prepared to battle. Sun Yun's eyes scanned his enemies. There were a total of 5, 3 workers, 1 guard, and the old clan head. If Sun Yun was careful, he would have had no problem defeating them. This time, a series of orc words came out of the clan head's mouth. It was the signal for the battle. However, after Sun Yun absorbed the orc guard's spirit, the orc workers could not threaten him at all. They were defeated with only 1 blow. This time, Sun Yun's attention was caught by another orc. An orc guard sneakily appeared behind the defeated orc work, swinging its axe at Sun Yun. Fortunately, Sun Yun had raised his shield in time to defend himself. However, the attack broke the bones in his arm and made Sun Yun grunt in pain. Amidst the fire, the orc's clad head was left alone as if the guard gave up on guarding it. This means the guard was the last obstacle. Sun Yun charged forward as he evaded another attack. His eyes glinted as he thrust his sword. The guard threw a mouthful of blood as Sun Yun's sword pierced through its body. However, all this time, the orc's clan head was preparing a surprise and it escaped Sun Yun's notice. Defeating the guard, Sun Yun was already prepared to take the clan head's life. Unfortunately, the clan head was ahead of him. Sun Yun was stunned at the sudden development. A beam of fire burst forth from the clan head's staff. Sun Yun could only grit his teeth as he received the attack with his wooden shield. The orc's clan head smiled with satisfaction upon seeing its masterpiece. Unfortunately for it, Sun Yun was stronger than he was before and he emerged from the smoke, still alive. This time, the orc's clan head was in disbelief. How could Sun Yun defend himself against fire with only a wooden shield? The achievement, the one who endures fire, has been achieved, and the skill, fire-resistant F, has been created. Sung Yun heard the notification as he stood in place with his face bloodied and clothes turned to shreds. You are dead. Sung Yun was greatly annoyed, saying the words through gritted teeth. Sung Yun and the Orcs clan head stood face to face. Seeing Sung Yun's advance, the clan head fastly reacted and started to attack once again. However, Sung Yun was faster. 2 decapitated hands holding a staff flew into the air. The Orcs clan head could not struggle against Sung Yun's speed. Face filled with sweat, the Orcs clan head roared in despair. He was now without his hand. The Orc pitifully let out a sound of fear. Without hesitation, the Orcs clan head turned his back and decided to run toward his camp. Sung Yun was further annoyed by the clan head's action. Step by step, he proceeded toward the clan head's camp. Sung Yun then slashed his sword, tearing away the obstruction in his eyes. Soon after, he saw something out of his expectations. Sung Yun discovered 2 young orcs, fearfully clinging to the clan head's embrace. One of the young orcs approached. It grabbed Sung Yun's knee. Seeing the young orc's tear-filled eyes, Sung Yun wondered if the orcs also valued family. He stood there motionless. His memories brought the past. His parents could only let him survive in exchange for their lives. At this moment, the young orc grabbed a weapon on its back. In the blink of an eye, the pitiful young orc turned violent. Seriously, how stupid, Sung Yun muttered as he angrily used the sword's handle and brutally smacked the young orc's head. Useless, the young orc's sneak attack caused its death. This time, the clan head and the remaining young orc attacked with full force. In the end, their desperate struggle was cut down. Sung Yun would destroy the monster's bloodlines even if he became a ghost. Congratulations, you have completed the 2nd floor of the Tower of Trials, Sung Yun received a notification. Later, Sung Yun was sent back to the waiting room where he checked the battered shield that saved his life. He could not use it anymore. This time it was close, Sung Yun muttered as he looked into the community. He discovered that half of them died. This time, something caught Sung Yun's attention. It was a chat of someone who found the way to return to Earth. There was a way to return to Earth. Sung Yun was pleasantly surprised. Information. Sung Yun used the command word and found out he could get a question voucher every time he entered a new floor. Sung Yun used his voucher and immediately found his answer. There was a temporary stone for sale that could be used to return to Earth for a few days after he completed the 5th floor. Beyond the 7th floor, an extensive system expansion would occur and items that can make him permanently return to Earth would be sold. If he returned to Earth, Sung Yun believed he could become an A-rank hunter. Soon, he proceeded to check his stats. Looking at his ability, Sung Yun grabbed his head in frustration. If he was on Earth, he would be overpowered. Sung Yun calmed down. He just barely completed the 2nd floor. The 8th floor was still far away, but he needed to be positive. His stats had already progressed tremendously. Sung Yun took off his burned clothing. He got 5 spirits to absorb after the battle. After a while, Sung Yun fully absorbed the spirits, and his stats increased again. He was overflowing with strength. Sung Yun started to run around the room. This was beyond the realms of humans. Sung Yun happily ran until he was running into the ceiling. However, he could not hold on for long and dropped to the floor. Unfortunately, he was greeted by the face of the wall. Sung Yun crashed heavily. After the impact, Sung Yun lay on the floor as his silhouette remained on the wall. Because of the unexpected growth, he could not control his strength. Shop. Sung Yun used the command word and purchased the big dead tree shield worth 2,100 points. Inventory. Sung Yun used the command word and checked his rewards from the previous trials: a black steel dagger and an assassin's cape. This time, Sung Yun finally looked awesome as he used the new gears. He needed to get used to all his items before the next trial. Sung Yun then started another round of training, running with his shield and brandishing his sword. Soon, he would become so strong that no one could approach him. Later, in a cold cave, Sung Yun came out of the portal. He had entered the 3rd floor of the Tower of Trials, difficulty hard. This time, the subject of the trial was a duel. Sung Yun raised his head and surveyed his surroundings. Soon, a notification appeared, and the Guardian of Darkness would enter. Sung Yun got into a fighting stance to receive his enemy, which could come from any direction. The countdown timer finished, but Sung Yun only felt silence. Then, in the blink of an eye, Sung Yun was stunned. Despite being prepared, he was easily struck by the sudden attack from his back. The attacker smiled playfully after making the first hit. Sung Yun grunted in pain. As another notification appeared again, he needed to defeat Doppelganger, the Guardian of Darkness.